My News 26 today. I'm Eric Wotilla here in the My News 26 newsroom. We've got a special guest in the studio today. Congressman John Moolenaar joins us once again. And Congressman Moolenaar, we're glad to have you here again. You have been in the studio a couple of times,
Sure.
kind of updating the viewing area on what you've been working on in Washington. And I know there's a lot new since we last talked.
Sure. Well, we've had tax reform, the Tax Cut and Jobs Act, which is something that's already benefiting our residents in Michigan. They're seeing more in their paychecks. Businesses are giving pay increases and better bonuses and benefits. We're also seeing money that was offshore reinvested in America. And companies like Chrysler are investing and bringing jobs that were in Mexico back to Michigan. So some good news there. I think people are already seeing a benefit, but we have much more work to be done. And so we continue to work on both tax reform, but also regulatory reform, keeping businesses able to do what they do best and providing jobs, farms able to put food on our table. And so that's something we're working on in Washington. We also have the budget process that we're working on. And one of my priorities is to make sure our Great Lakes Restoration Initiative is fully funded. That's something that prevents invasive species from entering into the Great Lakes, does a lot of good research on how we can improve our Great Lakes. And that's something we're also working hard to fight the opioid problems that we face as a society. And I serve on the Health Subcommittee on the Appropriations Committee, and that's something we're going to be working with local and state officials to make sure we're addressing that situation.
Certainly, and that opioid crisis has been a hot topic in the news both locally and nationally. You mentioned also you're working on something on a little lighter note, some of the rural broadband initiatives.
Yes, and that's critical. And when we think of northern Michigan, when we think of our rural communities, there are areas where we can't access the internet the way we would like to. And so whether it's from a economic development perspective or for families who their children, they want to make sure they can do their homework assignments and projects that they need the internet for. We want to expand that. The president suggested $50 billion for rural infrastructure. I'm hoping to include a rural broadband as part of that, and we're working with that in the Farm Bill, and we're going to find partners that we can collaborate with here in Michigan to expand that here in Michigan.
And we've talked about rural broadband. We've talked about some of the tax work you've been doing. Are there some other key topics you've been working on as well in Washington?
Well, we're also working hard to rebuild our national defenses. When you consider the threats that we face from traditional adversaries like Russia, North Korea, Iran, as well as emerging concerns, China that's rising economically and in a defense posture, we need to make sure we're prepared for every threat and to lead peace through strength.
And on the note of threats, of course, a recent event that has been tough to talk about, but it has been a important topic to talk about, is the shooting in Florida, which happened recently. What have been your views? Have you taken any action since that shooting? I know there's been a lot of talk about gun control, and kind of curious about what you've been working on that note.
Well, in the House, we recently passed legislation that would modernize and improve the reporting system. For instance, that was a killer who never should have had access to a weapon. He was someone who had repeated visits from law enforcement. He had posted threats towards other students. The FBI didn't follow through, quite frankly. And so we need to do a better job of preventing these kinds of situations and updating the information that people have available is a good first step.
Certainly. And quickly, we have about 30 seconds left here. Is there anything we haven't talked about that you think is important we mentioned today?
Well, it's just an exciting time for our country. We're seeing jobs growing. We see our economy growing. We're going to work on a farm bill in the next few months, which for northern Michigan and our rural economy, that's vital. Want to make sure we're supporting our agriculture because it's so important to Michigan.
Certainly. Thank you very much. Once again, here with Congressman John Moolenaar, I'm Eric Wotilla, reporting for My News 26 and My TV 12.